Dear BalkanPod listeners, today we will talk about the pharmaceutical industry, supply chain, and drug stock management in the Balkans, especially in Albania. I have guests from Tehran. Her name is Mariza, who works as a pharmacist there. She has contributed to the civil society by being an active part of different non-governmental organizations. Currently, she holds the position as Liaison Secretary of Albania for EPSA, which is the world's biggest organization for pharmacy, and she is trying to give her contribution to the healthcare system in Albania. Welcome to BalkanPod, dear Nare. I'm really appreciated you accepted my invitation.
Thank you, dear. Dilek, it's a pleasure for me too. I thank you too for this invitation. It's a pleasure for me to discuss with you about this issue.
That's great. So we can start with the first question. For example, the key to combat pandemic is collaboration across the supply chain. And how is the supply chain cooperation among the countries in the region?
Okay, Albania is being challenged in different sectors in this pandemic period, including the pharmaceutical one, as it is a vital one. This COVID-19 found us really unprepared to handle it. So this thing was associated with several short and long-term negative effects. During the first days of the quarantine, there were shortage of the basic pharmaceutical drugs and basic self-protection equipment, such as medical gloves or face mask or hand sanitizers. Also, the Albanian authorities introduced an export ban on certain pharmaceutical drugs and medical equipment due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But European countries such as Turkey, Kosovo, Hungary offered the appreciated help with the donation of different medical equipment that are essential in this period. When the quarantine was over, then the government started again the importation and exportation of the medical equipment and medication among countries. So now I can say that the situation is improved compared to the first days of the quarantine.
I see. To cope with the pandemic situation, all pharmacies required an increasing stock of a few months for some specific drugs. In a view of the potential shortage crisis of drugs with raw materials from China during the COVID-19 pandemic. So for you, drug stock management is enough to combat with pandemic in the region?
The pandemic clearly showed us that the drug stock is not enough to combat with the pandemic, because in Albania it found us unprepared as we were in shortage of medical equipment and pharmaceutical drugs. Some reasons. The first one is because of the induced demand of buying medications due to the COVID-related situations, such as increased hospitalization, incidence of COVID-19 related pneumonia, and increased demands for assigning patients to ventilators, contributed to related prescription medicine shortage. The COVID-19 related shortage also affected the health market for medical devices and personal protective equipments. The second reason was because of induced demand of panic buying. Induced demand for stocking medication by public, which is called panic buying, and this happened especially for the chronic diseases medications. The third reason is because of supply shortage of both active pharmaceutical ingredients and finished products from China and India. As we know that these two countries are two of the world's biggest suppliers of these products. So as they were struggling with the disease and also they had some slowdown in production, this directly reflected into shortage and price increase in essential prescription medicines, including antibiotics.
So since March 2020, the outbreak of COVID-19 has spread the whole world. So the supply of raw materials is no longer a single regional problem. It has become the world's problem. So for Albania, which is the most important country that you get raw materials and drugs to combat the COVID-19?
Actually, there are some countries that Albania get drugs to combat the COVID-19, such as Turkey, Greece, Italy, Germany, China, etc. But as we know, the vaccine is not still produced, so the therapy against the COVID-19 is based on antibiotics, anticoagulants, corticosteroids, and immunoboost supplements.
So you talk about the vaccine. So do you have a national vaccine production project or drug development project being carried out in your country?
In Albania, there is only one pharmaceutical industry that is named Profarma, but Profarma produces only 276 products, but does not include any vaccines. So we are not involved in any global project of producing the vaccine.
Pharmaceutical industry has a historically intimate relationship with the healthcare. So how is the links between the health sector and pharmaceutical sector in Albania? What are your most important complaints?
The health system in Albania is mostly public, so the government provides most of the services that are offered to the population, like in the fields of promotion, prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. Pharmaceutical is a private sector whose importance in the Albanian economy is justified by its vital roles in the terms of maintaining the standards of care. Since March 2020, when COVID-19 was characterized as a global pandemic by the World Health Organization, it has had major short and long-term impacts on the health system and pharmaceutical sectors. Okay, some of the most important complaints are: the first one is the shortage of personal protection equipment and medical devices, and also pharmaceutical drugs. This happened due to the COVID-19 situation and also related to the shortage of supplies by the world's bigger suppliers like China and India, as I said before. Another complaint is the delayed approval for the non-COVID-19 products, because as we know now, all the other countries, also Albania, their priority right now is to produce the COVID-19 vaccines. So this has directly affected to the delays approvals for the non-COVID drugs. The third one is due to social distancing precautions, marketing and promotion of healthcare products to providers now have been shifted from face-to-face towards the telecommunication. The same things happen for the patient too, because the visits now to the specialists are being transformed to the telehealth and telecommunication using their mobiles. Another complaint is the pharmaceutical industry slowed down growth, because as we know, the coronavirus pandemic resulted in economical slowdowns for many countries, and this will lead to pharma industry growth slowdown, which are very sensitive to country economic growth. The most important things are that we should identify these complaints, and the policy makers should, after they identify these complaints, should try to make the right decision to improve the situation. Based on my experience, as I'm working as a pharmacist in Albania, the patients have a lot of complaints about the situation. The first days of the quarantines, there were complaints about the shortage of certain pharmaceutical drugs and the personal protection equipment, such as medical gloves, medical clothing, protective clothing, the face mask, or the hand sanitizers. But as I said before, after when the quarantine finished, we had all these products, but then the patients were unhappy because of the prices. As we know, the pharmaceutical house stores have changed their prices, have increased their prices, so the patients were unhappy about this. And I can say that these are the most important complaints for the patients.
The governments all around the world adopted some supportive measures for these sectors, like pharmaceutical industry and healthcare sector. What the government did for your sector to control and mitigate the impact of the pandemic?
The pandemic situation is hard to handle for all the world, especially for developing countries like Albania, because before the pandemic, we also suffered from a very dangerous earthquake, which caused loss in people and material. So I can say that our economy was damaged before the pandemic. The government tried to do his best to provide us the most important materials during the constant risk at work. But during the first months of the quarantine, the professional medical staff that didn't have the essential materials, like medical gloves, face masks, hand sanitizers. So we're working in a very hard situation when our lives were in risk. I have been working during the pandemic situation, and all I can say, it was the hardest time of my life. It was the hardest time of every healthcare professional, because we were in the first line of the battle against the virus and we were not protected. But when the quarantine was over and the importation and exportation of these materials started again, now I can say that we have all this basic medical equipment. But during the quarantine, it was so hard. I have to be honest with you to tell that that we were in shortage of all the personal protection equipment. And I have to say also another thing, that the pharmacists in Albania, not as the other healthcare professionals such as doctors or nurses, did not receive the deserved appreciation during the quarantine, because we were working every day fighting the coronavirus and taking care of our patients. But in the social media or in the television, we did not receive the deserved appreciation like the other professionals did.
This is a really important point that you say. And actually, my question will be about you and your sector. So, as a vital part of the healthcare system, like pharmacies play an important role in providing medicines, vaccines, and critical health services to the public. So, you have to protect yourself. So, how do you, as a pharmacy staff, minimize the risk of exposure to COVID-19? How do you do in your pharmacy? How do you protect yourself?
Okay. Being a healthcare professional is always challenging, as we are always trying to provide our patients with the superior medical care. But being a healthcare professional during this pandemic is even harder, as we are directly exposed to the risk of getting infected. As healthcare professionals, we pharmacists can play a key role during the pandemic because we act directly with the community. We continue to take care for patients with chronic diseases. We work every day in the pharmacies, even in the hospital pharmacies, and we provide pharmaceutical care to COVID-19 patients. I'm protecting myself following rigorously the World Health Organization advices, such as wearing the face mask, washing my hands regularly, keeping the social distancing, disinfecting the drugstore surfaces. I use my hand sanitizer when I don't have the opportunity to wash my hands. So these things I use to protect myself at the pharmacy.
Do you have any funny story between you and customer about insisting on breaking the rules?
That's a nice question. To be honest, yes, I have some stories. But to be honest, some people in Albania just don't believe the existence of COVID-19. And they like to show it every time that the virus doesn't exist, why you're keeping your mask, why you're keeping your medical gloves, why you're keeping the distance, etc. I have a lot of stories in my work when my patients try to encourage me to take off my mask or to disrespect the social distance, but I have resisted their effort. And I also try to advise them, to suggest them that we should follow the advices from the World Health Organization. We should wear our face mask because it's for their safety, it's for all safety. And recently in Albania, the government has decided that we should wear our face mask everywhere outside our houses. This was, I think, the best decision to do because we have a lot of new cases every day reported. So the situation is a little bit dangerous. And people are using their face mask.
Dear Mariza, thank you once again for participating in my BalkanPod.
Thank you too. It was a pleasure for me. Turkey helped us a lot during the pandemic period. It was hard for us. We didn't have any face mask for the medical staff who were working every day exposed to the risk. So they helped us. Turkey, I have to say this too, that has helped us even in the earthquake. In November, we had an earthquake here that caused loss in people and material. And Turkey was the first country to offer their help. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Dear listeners, see you next week, same day and same time. Thank you, dear Mariza.